New printer day is one of my favorite days, but one of my least favorite days is getting that new printer in the slicer of my preference day. Today's that day. Let's do it together. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here and you like this kind of thing, make sure to leave a like and get subscribed. We're going to be going through how to add a Sovol SV06 and consequently the SV06 Plus into PrusaSlicer, one of my preferred slicers. We've covered it plenty of times. We'll cart to the playlist so you can take a look. These SV06s have been absolute units. They're basically a Prusa in cheap clothing. I love the machines and they run incredibly well. Problem is, the slicer they come with sucks. I don't like skinned Cura. If I'm going to use it, I want to use either regular Cura or regular PrusaSlicer. Unfortunately, Prusa does not have any setup for the SV06, just like PrusaSlicer doesn't have this segue to our sponsor, 3D Musketeers. If you are tired of getting your printer set up and dialed into your slicers, and it's just not worth the pain anymore, you can reach out to the pros at 3D Musketeers. With over 40 years of combined experience and over 40 3D printers, we can help you get your ideas made quickly and efficiently as possible. In fact, parts that we're running right now, some of them are under NDA, are actually all from fans, which is pretty cool. Thank you guys for supporting us and the work that we do here. But we recognize not everybody is looking for 3D printing, or even more specifically, incredibly high-end 3D scanning, where I have a trip coming up. I think you guys are going to really enjoy that one. But they do want to kick a couple of bucks into that creator fund, Patreon, YouTube channel members, and now with a $10 option on PayPal. Links, of course, in that description down below, so that you can support us here on the channel and the work that we do. We're making a lot of videos to help people just like you make awesome every single day. And if you're not really in the mood to drop some coin, hey, like, comment, share, subscribe, and all the wonderful things help this channel grow, help us reach a broader audience, which is always wonderful. Looking at bone stock PrusaSlicer, it starts with a Prusa Mark 3S Plus, or whatever previous printer you had open. This is 2.6 Alpha 5, for those that are wondering. If you're following this on a later date, things might have actually changed between now and then. This process is consistent no matter what machine that you have. The best thing to do is look at what features it has. If your machine has auto bed leveling, you might actually be able to use a modified version of the Prusa start code and just modify a Mark 3S. But if you have a printer that is some generic Ender 3 clone, the steps here are a little bit different. Let's talk about your generic everyday 3D printer. We're gonna go Configuration Wizard, gonna open it up. These aren't Prusa printers, so we're gonna go to other vendors. We see that we don't necessarily have the one we're looking for. We're particularly looking for Sovol, but let's say you have some sort of Ender 3 clone. Simple. Go to Creality, hit Next. From there, you'll be able to choose roughly the printer that you're looking for. Now, to be clear, find the one that has the most features that yours has. So if it has a Bowden, it has a roughly same build volume as an Ender 3, non-all-metal hot end, just choose an Ender 3 and make your adjustments from there. Code is pretty consistent across printers in terms of homing commands and that kind of thing, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. You might have to change a little bit in your start and end codes, but there's a cheat code for that as well. Find the one that best fits you, click Next. Here, you'll be able to define custom profiles. Don't worry about that. In terms of materials, honestly, whatever you're feeling, and then you can hit Finish. In our particular case, we can define a custom printer, and we can name it SV06. From there, it will ask us what type of firmware it is. We are running Marlin, specifically Marlin Legacy on this machine. So we got that. We'll go Next. It'll have us set the bed size and everything. Just go through these steps, plug in everything that you need for your particular machine, and you'll be done. It's not too bad. I'm just gonna breeze through these so you guys can see. You have your X and Y, your Z, nozzle diameter, filament diameter, extrusion temperatures, which is the normals for PLA, heat bed temperature, and 0 if you have no heated bed. Your printer does have a heated bed, which in today's day and age it should. 60, pretty much fine. Then you're gonna move into your material choices. From there, click through a few times, you'll get into the view mode. This will let you choose what you want. If you're more experienced, stick with expert. Otherwise, don't worry about it. I, however, did this a different way. The SV06 is incredibly similar to a Prusa Mark III's. It has a direct drive hot end, auto bed leveling using an inductive probe, which is identical to the way that Prusa does it. Flex plate, which not necessarily a big deal, but its build is incredibly similar to Prusa. X and Y are roughly the same, Z is roughly the same. Their sizes are a little bit different. And yes, for those that are part of our Patreon, I will upload this for you guys. So if you're looking just to download it, it's up there. When we look at the machine itself, we can see that our max print height is 250 and our bed is 220 by 220 because that's what the Sovol SV06 is. Marlin Legacy, G-code thumbnails, even though they don't work, it's no big deal. We do show that it supports stealth mode. It doesn't, but it doesn't change anything. These are just add or remove certain features from the machine. Custom code is where things get a little bit different. You can see the code is pretty much the same. What I did is I loaded up Sovol's slicer. After loading up the particular slicer that the printer comes with, you would copy out the start code and the end code. From there, you would replace the start and end code that you have in your slicer. Here we are comparing the start code from a Prusa Mark III's and the start code that I'm using for the Sovol SV06. Most of this code is modified directly from the slicer that the Sovol SV06 comes with. So yes, unfortunately, if you are going to set your own custom printer, you might need to install their software just a little bit to pull the start and end code off of. Otherwise, you can try to pull the start and end code off of the SD card, but it might not give you everything that you're looking for. When we realized that the Sovol and the Prusa use pretty much the exact same start code, it was an easy thing for me to do. I just took the Prusa start code and modified it because it uses the same type of G-code in the Sovol that Prusa uses. So it made sense for us just to modify it this way. If you're looking for something like an Ender 3 though, its start code will be considerably easier. And this would be relatively generic for any Ender 3. This is what the basic Ender 3 code will look like. If you want certain things like preheating and all of that, you can do that. Whether you choose to have it preheat to the extruder temperature or you have it preheat to a set temperature, it doesn't matter. Especially if you're doing something like a probing sequence, you might choose to have a lower probing temp than you would for your first layer temp. This is a common thing that is done. But for the Sovol, it just made sense to take and copy the Prusa code. Yes, we have details still in here regarding the Mark III, but guess what? Works just fine. These are the little tricks that will make life a little bit easier. We can see that the really only differences we have here, things about printer firmware, which it doesn't work on the Sovol. The Sovol's not a huge fan of the else and end if commands either. It caused some really wonky things to occur when we were testing it, but otherwise it just works. If your printer doesn't have a probe and you are looking to add it, make sure you know what command is being used. Because once you have that command, you can basically just look at modifying Prusa's code. And yeah, this is totally okay because open source is amazing. This is why we love the open source community. But to be clear, it works in closed source as well, as long as you have access to the G-code lines themselves. Speaking of closed source, even in Bamboo Studio, you are able to give, this is specific for Filament, custom start and end code. You can use this to inject what you're looking for. And yes, the machine does enable you to go ahead and modify the actual start code, but be warned, some machines do things a little bit differently. Things like, you know, a G-code command for the logo lamp, right? If you are gonna try to set up closed source printers, just make sure you understand the G-code flavor that they use. But by and large, you're not going to, so it's really nothing to worry about. From here, a lot of it is just try. But as you can see, we even have big printers like our Fusion 3 F410, which is directly above me there, running perfectly fine inside of PrusaSlicer. Mind you, we're still tuning those profiles to be good, but there you go. What we did is we pulled the start code from Simplify 3D, which at the time of buying our F410 was the slicer that Fusion 3 Designs recommends. We pulled the code, we put it into PrusaSlicer, and now we basically have a working printer. The only bummer is that unless you have the fancy JPEG image, you don't get the really cool image of your print bed like you do when you choose the Mark 3S. That's cool, and I know that people have produced them for certain printers, but it's not that big of a deal. Something to note though, when you change between user presets and non-user presets, your filament type will get all messed up. So make sure that you double check what is, and specifically make sure that you choose the right speed setting, because that is really slow. It's designed for flexibles. So we would go to this. And while you might struggle a little bit with this, it's a phenomenal task to learn, because what it does is it enables you to take a printer that might have its own specific slicer that you might not like. Maybe it's an outdated version of Cura, or even further, could be a relatively closed source slicer. As long as you know how to feed G-code to the printer and what it's looking for, it is not that difficult to get the printer set up in a new slicer. It can be difficult, however, to get it set up and tuned perfectly. Certain slicers will hide settings away from the G-code. Make sure that when you're comparing the slicer you want to use versus the one the company says to use, that you make sure that you copy all those settings over. Generally speaking, stock settings from manufacturers are incredibly easy on the machine. Generally way slower than you can run anyways, but they're done because they pretty much ensure perfect print quality. So when you do look at tuning it in, start with what they give you and then work toward it. With the SV06, since we have it set up as a Prusa printer, we can still use all the Prusa settings, which is important because it's basically a Prusa. Because we're not modifying the steps per millimeter, that is internal on the machine itself. This enables us to just feed it Prusa G-code. Literally, when we save out for an SV06, it shows as a Mark 3S. Do I care? No, I don't care at all, because it doesn't matter. The printer doesn't care what you've named it. I can name that Sovol MK3S. And for the SV06 Plus, we would just have to go in here, change the max height, change the X and Y, and then you're done. Even further, and this is good for the businesses out there, little tip for you business people. We have a quoting MK3S. This is literally just 1 meter square. So we can just pack it full of parts and be able to figure out what they all cost at once. And then I can split them up into build plates as we feel needed. This is incredibly valuable. And if you know you can do this, it makes life better. Looking at the actual print settings, it's 1000 by 1000 with a max print height of 210, which is the max print height of the Mark 3S. That way we know if any parts are too tall, and we know that it's 250 by 210 for the X and Y. So we just keep that in mind when we're looking at cutting up big builds. This is really useful if someone sends you a ton of parts, maybe they're all relatively large, and you want to figure out what they all cost without doing 6 or 7 different slicing instances. I will say that is where Bamboo gets some credit that I hope that Prusa does pull over. If I do want to do it, I literally just add a plate and then I can click between the 2 plates. That is one thing I hope that PrusaSlicer gets. But the cool thing is, it's all open source, so they can do a pull request and pull it in. I hope this works for you. And if you have any questions, let me know down in those comments below. But this is my method for how we get printers that come with some generic outdated version of Cura running well inside of PrusaSlicer. And this setup process, at least what you're basically going through, is identical between the different slicers. You set up a generic printer, make sure your start and end code is correct, and send it. Now, of course, make sure that you watch those first few layers and have your finger ready on that oh crap switch, because sometimes code can be a little wonky. I know when we first tried the SV06, it was giving me some really weird errors, and it was because the firmware, the filament settings, the else and end if were for some reason causing us problems. When I removed them, everything was great. This is what I love about having open source. And if you are used to working with one slicer, this will work with pretty much every slicer that we've tried. Obviously, the steps might be a little bit different for each slicer, but the process is still the same at the end of the day. So for those of you out there that are struggling with 5 or 6 different slicers, worry no more, because you don't have to do that. This makes life a lot easier for those of you that are just starting out but want to learn one consistent slicer. And then, because of course manufacturers are not going to support their slicers anywhere near as good as companies like Prusa or Ultimaker will, that's Ultimaker Cura and Prusa's PrusaSlicer, when they do their updates, you can quickly just hit the update button and you get all the new features with none of the BS. Let me know how this goes for you guys down in those comments below. And if you have a different method, I'd love to know about it as well. Hey guys, real quick before you go, I received a package. Mind you, this is art that I commissioned, but this is from Art by Emma Beth. We'll link to their Instagram in the description. But my gosh, it's stunning. Victoria, look, it's you. It's you. This is colored pencil. Like, guys, come on. I don't often get custom art commission, but this was too good. I saw some of her pictures. Her Instagram is absolutely amazing, and her prices are incredibly reasonable. So if you guys are looking to get some custom art made, whether it's for your pets, other people in your life, whatever it might be, go check out Emma Beth over on Instagram. Links in that description down below. I am not getting paid to say that. In fact, I paid full price for this, and I'm gonna do it again. Figured you guys would like this though. Victoria has her own custom artwork, and she is absolutely beside herself. As you can tell, she is absolutely beside herself. Look, it's you. Do you like it? Yes, you do. She loves it, and so do I. Thank you, Emma Beth. This is amazing. Guys, if you do want to get this kind of thing, links are in that description down below. And no, there's no coupon codes or anything like that. It's just really awesome and handwritten note in cursive. Quality work right there. All right, I'm gonna go. I'm really excited for this. Okay, outro time. That's all I have for you guys today. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. Mic check, mic check. Thank you. What a good girl. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video, and a massive thank you goes out to all of our Patreon and YouTube channel member supporters whose names are listed right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. Thank you for all that you do in making this possible. Right below me will be our entire look at the slicers. There's a lot of them, and some of them are probably due an update. Let me know in the comments which one you guys want to see next. And then right next to that will be my unboxing and first look at the Sovol SV06. I will see you all down in those comments and in the next one. Take care.